I am not, do not require an NDA for this. And that's the beauty of this case study.
Okay.
The information is public information that I used. So what am I presenting today? I don't have a ton of slides, but I do have some stuff to show, a lot of stuff to show. It's just not in beautiful slide format. But the bottom line is I volunteer for the U.S. Coast Guard. And the U.S. Coast Guard is part of the United States government. And they're sort of unique in the armed forces that they have a uniformed civilian volunteer organization that helps them with a bunch of their missions, which include, the Coast Guard does a bunch of different things, but the main focus of the auxiliary is recreational boater safety. That being said, we do patrols. We help them in watch standing, meaning if you radio for help on a VHF marine radio, it's often an auxiliarist that's picking up and responding to the call. Air missions, patrols, vessel exams, just tons of stuff. It's about 30% of the force in the Coast Guard is actually volunteers. It's a pretty cool thing, and it's sort of where I volunteer my time. You'll probably see, if you watch enough on here, you'll see things behind me that end up popping up and with little emblems and stuff around. Anyway, the reason I'm bringing that up is the auxiliary sort of has, they have a lot of policies and procedures. And because it is the government and it is part of a military organization, there's lots of what we would call standard operating procedures. They need to be followed. They need to be understood. And that forms the basis of how we do a lot of what we do, which means there's a lot of stuff that's located in PDFs. And to make it even more sort of complicated, as the Coast Guard's being asked to do more and more. Geopolitically, it's in a very interesting place where it's not actually a Navy. So it doesn't have a formal military standing internationally, which means they can go into the South China Sea and, for example, not ruffle feathers in the way that, say, a U.S. naval warship would. So that's one small example of the flexibility that the Coast Guard has. And as a result, their missions are changing, they're expanding, and therefore the auxiliary needs to change and expand with them. If you combine that with all the policy, procedures, and you might imagine it's not the most technically innovative organization, you have a bureaucracy where people being able to keep up with what the policies are, where they are located in an increasing amount of documentation is a challenge for them. And so I thought, hey, this is a great opportunity to bring AI to the mix. So just to illustrate kind of an example of what I'm talking about, let's say you were there's one of the programs is called Boat Crew Program. And that is a program. Boat Crew is has some competencies, has some credentials that you can get. One of them is to become a crew member, so that you can go into and do patrols. So one of the questions, and to do a patrol, to be a crew member, there's training you need to do, but as importantly, there's training you need to do to maintain the credential. That's a big deal in the Coast Guard. They're a first responder amongst other things. And so there's this phrase that you train to maintain. So when we go out and we patrol, almost every patrol we do, we're doing some training, even where we've done it 100 times over. You just keep doing it. There's another phrase in the Coast Guard, which is nothing is routine. So you go out, you think it's going to be a routine patrol, and it turns out not to be. And so training and maintaining is very important. So one of the questions that would come up, this is just a use case, would be, all right, what do I need to do to stay current in the Boat Crew Program? Currency is the state of maintaining that certification. You've got to stay current in a bunch of requirements. And it turns out, to answer that question, I happen to be a boat crew member. there's 7 documents that you have to go through to answer the question. And this isn't because of different parts of the certification. Those are, you know, you've got things like on the boat training, shoreside training. There's training around, you know, just basic workplace stuff like sexual harassment and ethics training and confidential, you know, handling of information, that kind of training. So there's all these buckets of training. That's not even what I'm talking about. I'm talking about the documents that have to do with the policies around the training. So here, there's one called the auxiliary manual. It's sort of the Bible, if you will, for a lot of things, but it only gets updated once a year. So not everything is in it. And then there's some specific documents that come out, the operations process guide. I mean, you get the picture. There's a bunch of these documents. And then there are things that are policy changes that are updates to these manuals, because these manuals have to be promulgated, which is a legal term, by the Commandant of the Coast Guard, meaning they're entered into the Federal Register. There's a process for that. So in the interim, there will be these policy change documents. And then finally, depending on what district you're in, which is a geographic area, you may have district-specific requirements. I'm in Sector New York. Sector New York has some slightly different requirements than the sectors. For one, we can't wear shorts when we're on boat crew. If you're in Florida, District 14, of course they wear shorts. It's hot down there. Dehydration, heat-related issues are a concern, so they have a waiver to wear, or actually they can wear shorts. We're not allowed to. So, and that gets you to the official policy. Tons of documents, and as you can imagine, this is a challenge for people to keep up with. So the idea was, can we use generative AI search to solve this? And so how does generative AI search work? This is a very simple description, but basically, you guys know how regular search works is, so like ChatGPT, you feed it a question, it goes into its corpus of information, it finds things that are relevant, then it comes up with some sort of response, gives the response back to you. It can be amazing, but of course, they can also hallucinate. It can be incorrect. It can be lacking in information. So generative, and you'll see it here called generative AI document search. It's really, the system is called Retrieval Augmented Generation. That's the technical term. So when you want to look this stuff up, use that term. I did not use that in these documents because I'm trying to speak to my audience, which is the Coast Guard, and I didn't think that was going to be a helpful term for my goals. So anyway, this is how Retrieval Augmented Generation works. The user enters a search query, and instead of it going to a large language model, it goes into a database of documents that I have preloaded. It searches those documents. It pulls out the extracts of those documents that are relevant to the search. It takes those relevant documents along with the search, then sends that to the generative AI large language model and says, only use this stuff to answer this question. And if this stuff does not contain an answer to this question, respond back, I don't know. Don't go making stuff up. Don't go looking in your corpus. Don't look in Wikipedia. All you can do is look at these documents that were here to come up with the answer. That's the heart of Retrieval Augmented Generation. The retrieval part is that it goes in and retrieves documents in a private storage facility and then uses those to augment the generative AI, the generation of a response. So that's the Retrieval Augmented. It's augmented, it's generation augmented by document retrieval. Okay, so that's sort of how it works. Yes.
Yeah. So on. Okay. So just one question here. So your reference document, you must be keeping in some vector database, correct? I mean, to retrieve it from there. If it is confidential, I assume, I mean, it is not that, but still in the Coast Guard documents, if it is confidential, And even if you are retrieving some of the part and utilizing that information, you are utilizing, generative AI model for answering the question. Still, it is taking those information out of that. So, don't you think your confidential data is going out?
So look, there's two parts to that question. The first is the system. The beauty of this case study and the reason that I chose to attack it is that the documents are all public documents.
Okay,
so if you are a citizen of the United States, these are your property. This is all U.S. public information. It is not confidential. It is publicly accessible by you right now. I could give you a URL to every one of these things. It is free. It is not copyrighted. So it makes for the perfect use case scenario for this. That being said, I think the question still has applicability to, you know, other scenarios. And the answer is, if you, this information, when you grab, the information has to be embedded, and we'll get into that in a minute, but basically something has to go in and turn all these documents into vectors and store them in a vector database embedded with some sort of semantic knowledge, right? So basically it's turned into vectors where similar numbers have similar meanings. Something has to do that. And that something I used was OpenAI. So to that extent, they're getting access to that information. I could have used other models. Then when the answer is being generated, again, it's using OpenAI. I could use a different model, but that's what it's using. So each of these black things is a place where, to your point, information is going out of the enterprise to some sort of information provider who's doing processing on it. And there's a point where, it would depend obviously on that partner and, you know, the context of it, how that information is treated. Again, I didn't care because of the use case I'm doing, but I think also the good news is it feels to me like retrieval augmented generation is a little less demanding than these open public systems in terms of the models. So it may be that free models or even private hosted models on your own platform could work. I see we've got two knowledgeable folks here that have both raised their hand. William gets first mover advantage. So William, you and then Todd.
Great. So you're training what, a fresh model from these documents, or the existing model has already been trained in all of these documents and you're just restricting the scope? And if you're training new models, how long are you waiting for an answer?
So great question. To distinguish here, I'm not training a model. I could train a model, but I haven't gotten to that point yet. What I'm doing here is adding a context to the prompt. So I'm basically taking the prompt, which is not just the user. So in a regular, if you go to ChatGPT, you put in you type something and send it to ChatGPT. Let's call that the prompt. It takes that question and tries to answer it. Here, I'm taking that, and the prompt is not just the question. I'm taking the prompt with the question and then stuffing it full of relevant documents and then telling the model, only answer this prompt with these questions. So there's no training involved. It's still fine-tuned. The model's fine-tuned however it was fine-tuned.
Yeah. So to answer the security question, it is possible to do this behind a firewall. We're doing exactly that. And as I understand, Andrew, you're getting to this, there are three approaches. One is RAG, Retrieval Augmented Generation. The second is model fine-tuning, where you take an existing LLM and fine-tune it. And the third is building your own model using a specific corpus of data. Each of those has its own pros and cons, but it's possible to do that either in the public domain or behind a secure firewall.
And those three things are not mutually exclusive either. So on that scale, we have from the easiest, just retrieval augmented generation here. Then you could add, which is what I would do next, add fine tuning, which is where I would go in and fine tune the model. I haven't chosen to play with that here yet because I actually think there's more mileage I can get out of just adjusting the prompt and adjusting the way the retrieval algorithms are working. But then I could fine tune the model. And the way you would do that is you would build a list of questions and responses, and you'd send those to OpenAI, and on a fine tuning job, and say, fine tune this model with these questions. You need 50 or 100 of them to do it. And then you get back a fine tuned model, which would actually be a different chat completion endpoint. So you get a different URL than the one used for regular chat GPT. It'd say like GPT-3-5- T Bailey, and you would use that because it would be fine tuned on your stuff. So then you would probably, here in the scenario I'm doing, you do both of those together, right? Because I've started at the easiest thing and then working to the more complex, which is fine tuning. But then if that wasn't enough, then you probably go all the way to the beginning, go, let's create a model, or start with a model, retrain it, or create a model with a base model, and then fine tune it. And then I guess if you did that, you wouldn't even need to do response augmented generation. Although it seems pretty fast. If you have, here I had a specific corpus of information that I want to use. It's probably not enough to train an entire model, maybe. But anyway, I'm waxing philosophic. William, did we got to you? We got to Todd. All right, I'm going to keep going then. So that's the system, and so some of the use cases that I thought that it would be able to help with. Let me see if I can share this document. Hopefully that is big enough.
Mm-hmm.
So basically, I created a proposal, right? Now one of the advantages is, I listed them here, but basically you get efficient. It's a very efficient way to get to information. So instead of looking up stuff on a website, these documents are scattered all over the place. You could get to them quicker. It's accurate. There's a lot of people, because they don't want to do the homework themselves, they ask other people what the policy is, which may or may not be correct. And it's easy and centralized. So from a document management standpoint, it all lives on a folder, basically. And so so some of the benefits for the auxiliary are policy compliance. So making sure that people are following the policy. New members, and onboarding is a big one. It's pretty daunting to kind of, get up to speed on any of this stuff as a new person when you don't even know the language that, every organization has its own language. That's certainly true with the Coast Guard. Training in the field mission, and then language access. This is a big one, guys. So as you're thinking about this for your organizations, in the U.S. government, there is an executive order that was put in place in the year 2000 called Improving Access to Services for Persons with Limited English Proficiency. Basically, what it says is every government department and service must provide support for people who do not speak English as their primary language, to the extent possible that it doesn't limit that service or department's pursuit of its missions. Meaning, if it can do it without unduly burdening the organization, it must do it. You can see the language here. So the Coast Guard is one of those. Well, it turns out, if we go back to that model, if we're using a big language model here for the generative AI part, we could tell it to respond in another language. In fact, the user question could be in another language. It could then translate the question, go do document retrieval, bring back the English language documents, and then convert the whole thing, get a generate a response, then convert the whole thing to another language. If any of you guys speak another language well enough, we'll give it a try here and see how well it does. This is an area where I'm not able to evaluate very well. But that's a killer use case right there, just one, right? That would apply to many organizations. So, so then let's talk about technically what I did for this. I'll stay in this document for a minute. So technically, here's what I built. Can you guys see this okay?
Yep.
Yeah.
Okay. So this is sort of looking at that retrieval augmented generation setup a little more technically. So now basically what happens is there's basically 3 stages. One is getting the documents into the system, then getting those documents into the vector database, which involves creating embeddings. So that's a machine learning activity, and then when creating an interface for somebody to chat with, and then when the chat comes in, having it take the question and go in and grab the information that's relevant to it and combine that information with the question, send it to GPT, get an answer, and then send that answer back to the person. So you can see this isn't really as process flowy. So it's a little hard to tell that story now because the arrows are going in all the directions. But the basic components are a GitHub repository that has some scripts that do the different things. They're in Python code. There is, I'm using large language models in 2 places, one for the embedding and one for inference. Inference is the term we use for basically doing the reasoning, coming up with the response to the query. There's a vector database that stores the information. And then you need to have some sort of web app that the user can interact with that lives on a web server somewhere and functions. And then you might want some way to kind of be able to see from behind the scenes what's happening, what questions people are asking, response times, whatever metrics you want to put in place to monitor uptime, model performance, maybe even test new things. So this is sort of the system setup for it. Any questions here?
Looks good. Oh, weight and biases, I mean, that's, if we can just give a little bit overview on that.
So weights and biases is basically, are you guys familiar with Google Analytics for websites? So Google, you get a website, you connect it to Google Analytics, and then you can go in and see how many people come to your sites, where they go, what they do. It gives you basically a view into the performance of your website. In a way, that's what weights and balances is doing, except it's doing it for machine learning. So you connect these, so each of these, these scripts here has code in it that communicates back to weights and biases. So whenever anything happens here that I care about, I have it tagged, and I can go in here in weights and biases and see what happened. And it has a history of that. It's not everything. So there are metrics around the database usage, amount of CPUs, and how much information is in the database that are not stored in weights and biases. They're over here. So it's not the only dashboard for administration. It also doesn't have anything to do with how you get the documents into the system. But it is a key sort of performance dashboard for the machine learning part of the solution. And there are some others. And if we have time, I'll show you this interface. But let's look at the let's use the service. I mean, I went ahead and built the thing. By the way, you guys are going to be the first ones to see this. I haven't shared it the proposal I've shown to a couple of people. It hasn't been socialized yet in the organization. But now let's go in and look at the actual solution. Costs. Where is that tab? There it is. Okay. You guys are looking at the GitHub right now, right? Okay, so if you guys can remember the page we just looked at, here is the inference.py. This is the one that runs the user interface. There was a third one, which is not here, which is doing the vectors. And there's a fourth one that's ingesting the information. Those are not here because I don't need them to be publicly available right now. They're not, they're on my hard drive. I mean, they're on my computer here. And because loading the documents getting them into the vector database, it doesn't happen every day. And so I handle that programmatically right now. And I didn't really see the point. So I'm still working on that code to have it up here in GitHub. So it's somewhere else. So this is basically the stuff that's driving the user interface. And here's the user interface. It's on my website. You can, by the way, you guys can go to this right now if you want. This is the address. It's live. So it's a little rough still, but I gave it a brand name for the customer that I this for. Yeah, ask. And it's pretty simple. It has this input here. And here's the thing: if we were to go into ChatGPT and ask ChatGPT, let's try this a minute. I haven't done this, so this will be kind of fun. Let's ask a question and just compare the two for a minute.
Amazing. That would be interesting.
I'm going to try to share my whole screen, and if it's too small, we'll go back. But this way, we could actually see both things here. But maybe this will work. Is this?
I think it looks okay.
Yes, it's okay.
Yeah.
For
All
us,
right.
it is okay.
All right. So one thing. So let's say you wanted to run for flotilla commander in the auxiliary, which is an elected position. You would say, what are the requirements to run for FC? And of course, it's not going to have any idea what we're talking about, right? One of the things is interesting. It did figure out that run meant election, run for. I didn't say election, right? Or position. And yet it did figure that out. So that was good. It's casting a wide net. But, it's not specific. But now let's say I say, what are the requirements to run for flotilla commander in the U.S. Coast Guard Auxiliary?
And if you want to put like as of today, maybe something like that.
Well, we know it's only going to be 2021.
Okay.
Because their body of knowledge is, well, let's try. Well, if I put today, it's going to answer. It's going to balk. It'll say it doesn't know for today. I mean, we can try. Let's do it though. Let me just copy this. So we say as of today.
Mm-hmm.
So it's going to say, I don't know about today, but okay, September 2021. Okay, so it says, I recommend verifying through official sources. Oh, do you now? Well, maybe we'll just do that in a minute, chat. That's exactly what we're going to do. Membership. You need to be a member. completed a series of training. That's true. Typically, that minimum rank requirements, that's not true. Criminal background, true. Nominations, elected, that is true. Communication skills, they're considered essential, but it's not a requirement. Believe me, I wish it was. Commitment, yeah, so, but they don't give specifics, all right? So let's go even one further. According to the auxiliary manual, and I'm going to give it a commandant instruction.
Okay.
U.S.C.G. auxiliary manual. M16790. 16790. All right, that is a pretty verbose question. Okay. So now if it wanted to, it could go look. And the answer is no. That actually gave a worse answer.
Yeah.
Wow. Okay, I literally gave it the frickin' answer, right? And that document should have been in its corpus of knowledge. It was a publicly accessible document at the time of training. So it just doesn't have it. All right. So now let's go into the app. And we're going to ask the same question. We're going to start with the easiest one version here.
Oh, that would be up there.
So believe it or not, it is actually running. I'm having a little issue with this thing. It's not showing the status right here, but it'll show it. And then all of a sudden maybe it'll show it when it gives the answer. I don't know, but give it a second.
Yeah, it takes a bit of time because, you know, behind the scene it is running.
Part of why it's taking a little while is because it reruns all of the code every time you ask a question. It doesn't preload anything. Like if I do this on my laptop using this, it's between 5 and 7 seconds, depending on how many documents it has to pull. So the requirements are now. This is quite. Look, auxiliary manual gives the sections.
Wow.
It's very specific. And I had it add in just a summary of the sources. I need to go in and pull these page break things out, the sources. But then I went in and I asked, I had it deliver back the actual chunks of information it used to answer the question, right? And I put those, come on, man, where is it? It's not scrolling down either. Let me see if I can get to it. Come on.
Can you try the full screen maybe on the right-hand side?
Oh, yeah. Let's try that. Good idea. Okay, now you have the running thing. It's going to reset, though. That's fine. But you guys are like the first looking at this user interface, like
Yeah.
built the thing over the weekend. All right, so now you can see it's running. It's going to have to, it's running through the entire thing again. By the way, there's over 300 Coast Guard documents in here. It's only going to require one for this answer, which is the auxiliary manual.
This is a very, very strong use case. Like what we are looking here is that like it's a future, you know, it's just the first building block you already have initiated. And within like, I don't know how much work you have effort put in here, but this is something could be a building block for all organizations out there. And they're looking for that.
It's hiding the, there we go. Okay. So then here is, okay, sorry, Swap. No, okay, well, it's good to see you.
Good luck, Swap.
Thank
Full
you.
course details. Now we have the references. So each of these 4 references, here's the content. Oh, it used the procedure guide too. Oh, look at that. Is it all the procedure guide?
Mhm.
Oh my God, it all answered with the procedure guide. Okay, didn't even use those.
It's
So
good.
there's the excerpts from the documents.
Nice.
Sorry,
So-
Drew, are you recording this?
I am, yeah.
Okay, thanks.
There's one question here. Are you utilizing the LangChain behind the scene for giving the instructions?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes. So
And your code is open source right now?
it's open source. It is open. It's at D Wilkins Ask, and we can look at it right now.
Okay.
So this is the inference part.
Mhm.
Let's see. Can you guys? Let's see if I can just make this a little bit bigger.
You can see the screen, yes.
Okay. So here's I basically have all the configuration stuff here. And the reason I do is because then that can go into that weights and biases to be able to track. So whenever I do a run, I can see what all my parameters are. And so chunk size is how big each of those. So you remember these? If we were to count each of these, that's 1,000, they're about a little less than 1,000 characters, including the spaces, okay? That's what that chunk size is. Chunk overlap, so it basically, there's each chunk overlaps the next chunk, so if a piece of information flowed across chunks, have a better chance of capturing just that information. A bunch of other parameters, temperature 1. Anybody following OpenAI, ChatGPT would look at that and go, are you crazy? So temperature is the amount of creativity, freedom you're allowing the model, 0 being no freedom and 1 being go bonkers. It turns out when you tell it to only use the documents you gave it, going bonkers gives a much better response. I had this close to 0 and it would miss stuff. Like it wouldn't, and here's a great example. That word election was missing from the question, and it wouldn't necessarily go in and look at election. It might say, I don't know. When you go to 1, then it's a little more free to interpret the question and go into the documents. It doesn't change the content in the documents much, but I found it worked a lot better. So then here you can see.
And Drew, I believe somebody joined us from the phone.
Yeah,
so-
it's Marlene.
Who is this?
It's Marlene.
Oh, hi, Marlene.
Hi.
Hey, Marlene, we got to
Sorry, I'm late.
reschedule with you.
Marlene
okay.
from Responsible AI. No, okay.
Hey,
Sorry.
Marlene, we got to reschedule your presentation.
Yeah, one of these days I'm still struggling on my LangChain thing. I kind of wanted to be a little bit more techy next time.
Okay, good.
Yeah.
Well, I'll continue to pester you until you when you're ready, you can present.
Yeah.
I hear what you got to say because it sounded very interesting.
Thank you.
Okay, so we're just going through this the actual Python script used for the inference part of this retrieval augmented generation solution. So here you can see the imports of the different packages. So you can see there's LangChain, a few LangChains. So I'm using Quadrant for the vector store, QDRANT. And so we didn't talk about that much, but if we, let's see if I can do this without it being, so here are my clusters. And yes, I'm using a free tier. I'm looking for something in particular that says dashboard. There we go. Okay, so this is the vector store that we're using, and it has 8,210 of those chunks. Each chunk is one vector. Okay.
What's the size?
It-
8,002. Okay.
8,000 vectors. It's using OpenAI's ADA version 2 embedding, which is around 1,500 a dimension of 1,500. So it's 8210 times 152 whatever. It would be your the size of the vector, and that comes up to here we are, 105 megabytes.
Wow. Cool.
That's 300 documents, and some of those documents are many hundreds of pages. Of course, it's pulling out all the graphics, all the imagery, right? This is just text. So it's 105 megabytes of text and metadata.
And how much, I mean, it took for 100, the megabyte, how much tokens you consume for that, for creating this vector database? I mean, how much money you?
We hold that. We're going to get to that one.
Okay.
Drew has everything. I mean, Drew is so ready for that right now.
I mean, I just did it. Yeah. All right. So here's the code for it. Yeah, you can just go here and get it. Let's get into that. So I just ran the entire database last night. And so I think it's all right here. Okay, so here are the documents. And I think I put in the end of them. Oh, I skipped it. Are you kidding me? Well, let's run it now. Should still be there. Where is it? Oh. There you go. Here's your answer. So it's 238 documents. Oh yeah, I deleted a bunch of crap out of there. I got to go change that. It's not 300 anymore. It's 175 megabytes that went to this that of documents that went into the system, resulting of on my end a dictionary of 38. Now, why is that so different than what Quadrant is showing? Because Quadrants then has the dictionary, the indexes, and the metadata, and they have swap files. And so once you put it all together, it's I estimated 72 megabytes. It's 400, was that say 435,000 tokens?
No, 4 million, I think.
What?
Is it 4 million or 400,000?
Oh yeah, 4.3 million.
Yeah, 4.3 million. Okay.
And I was estimating 8,300 pages processed. So that'd be 8,300 because each chunk is one page. I was able to fit it all in one page, which is a key to the performance, by the way. So 8,000 and 72 megabytes. So what did they say? 70, they're saying 105 megabytes, so I'm not sure where they're getting, why.
That's okay. That's okay. So 4.3 million tokens will be approximately $400, correct?
8210, and I estimated 8323. So not bad, right? These are literally my here's my calculations. I just wanted to get a sense when I was building the thing, how big it would be. All right, so let's go to the last part of this, which is where you were going, which is costs.
Yes.
So what I estimated is, this is the proposal stuff, but let me show you the actual, spreadsheet I used, because you guys are going to be much more into this. All right. So I estimated for embedding 12,000 vectors will be where we end up. We're, you know, at like 7,000, 7,000 now, 6,000, 7,000. And and tokens per chunk is 507. And as a result of that, no, I'm sorry, forget that. That doesn't matter. It's vectors. Yeah, no, that's right. And tokens per chunk at one will end up being, I assumed 15 total library refreshes a month, which is a lot. You wouldn't even need to do that. That'd be $9 a month or $100 a year, just for that size. And then storage, I'm assuming $300 because this free layer that I have here, if I don't use it every week, they'll freeze it. And if I don't use it for 3 weeks, they actually delete it. So it's free forever, but you got to use it forever. So I went ahead and assumed their managed one, their smallest one, which gives you free 1 gigabyte. After that, they start charging. So the usage I'm anticipating was 0.10 of a gigabyte, 100 megs. I think that was wrong. You know, if we look at what we're already using, I need to go in and change that. Now I've seen what's actually being used. Inference, you know, is built off of the number of sessions. I'm assuming 300 sessions a day. I know the token size because I have it capped. I've got that capped. And the tokens per word, you know, all this I kind of know now from using it. And then I have the cost from ChatGPT. And here's where I think, you know, their costs are slightly different for the input and the output. But basically, you know, this is the biggest cost is inference. So that's what I'm assuming cost assumptions for this proposal. And you can see these are what it's based on. And then
Very good.
ISS is charging a lot of money for what they do. Hey, let's go take a look at that. Well, it's 1257. Okay, we'll do a real quick look at weights and biases. Where's my browser window?
And then I will have 2 questions after that.
Okay. Let me do this one quickly. And okay, so this usage right here is probably on my computer.
Nice.
This was to run the actual model, the inference part of it. Let's see what this particular one was. This run. Yeah, look at that. So it's actually, this is the embedding, I guess.
Yeah.
Oh, this is just using the auxiliary manual. Okay, so I tested this on only one document before I loaded everything in because I was spending a lot of money on the embeddings. So if we look at some of the most recent ones, okay, that's ask full because that's the last one we just did. Oh, wow. No, what is that got a bell on it for? Dark sun. Let's see what this one was. So this is probably one. I find their platform is confusing, to be honest. I don't know what's going on here, guys.
No worries. I think one of the things is we have to look into configuration files and see where these numbers are coming from. But yeah, we could do that. Absolutely.
I've passed in the part of the problem is it's not taking my, I have tagged the name of the project and it's just generating these random names. This one's still running. It didn't close out. Oh, maybe that's why it doesn't show the parameters. Anyway, I think that's enough of an overview for you guys to hopefully get a sense of how this works. All right, so let's have some discussion.
Yes, Drew. So I do have two questions. So the first one is that at least in the documents you have covered the advantages as well as some comparison for the company, like for the organization, how this looks like today and what would look like later for them. Like, it would make something easier for them. I think that is covered in document. Yeah.
Yeah, I tried to do it in two ways, just to set up how I approach this for you guys and you're thinking about it. And again, I haven't shared this to get response. But basically, what I did is I set up the problems in terms of knowledge management in the company and how AI can help in general. And then I set up here this generative AI document search concept. And then, so this sort of thing. Then, and in that, I talked about the benefits of that kind of approach over traditional knowledge management. So like over search or looking through websites or going through hard drives. So those are the general benefits, the advantages of this system over traditional knowledge management systems. And then when I proposed the actual solution, which I gave a name with a mission, then this provide members with efficient, accurate, and easy access to the authoritative sources. These terms, efficient, accurate, easy access, then I keyed off of those for the actual use case benefits. So policy compliance, and in each of, so that's sort of like the use case bucket. And then there's bullets in each of those as a specific use case underneath it. Very vague, general, but use cases. So we've got 4 or 5 main ones. So that's where I handled the benefits. Yeah, in the document.
Thank you very much. I have to draw, but it was awesome. Basically, it was, very much informative, and I think I'll be utilizing some of your work basically in our space too. So thank you again.
You're welcome. And if you want me to reprise any part of this for your benefits, I'm happy to do it. You can hop on a call with you guys or, a video or whatever you want. I'm happy to help.
Thank you. Thank you. Have a good rest of the day.
Thank you. Thank you, Tegan.
So I just have a couple more comments.
Yes. So the second one was this is great. You're going to have conversation with the U.S. Guard. I would be very much interested, what was their response? And then the second thing is, how are you trying to make it as a first building block? Because this use case, when I see outside in market, it's not. Maybe there's some building, but not at that level what you have made. And I'm not only talking from the business perspective, but from the technology perspective as well. So one piece of advice as well, think about it, how you want to make it as a first building block to initiate a different conversation with different organizations to do the same thing.
I would agree, Syed. It's sort of like, you got to put something out there, see what works, and then with a mind towards how you can scale something. I think here, for me personally, I want to see this obviously happen in the auxiliary. Also, I'm going to share it with the Coast Guard because I think they could be doing something similar. Although once you do that, then you're dealing with confidential documents and some other things. So, and obviously security is a much bigger issue once you're dealing with inside a organization. But I think the starting point for it was one piece I did start to think through, and I would encourage anybody to do this, is I started to think, okay, I did a freebie solution, but if I needed to launch this on, say, Amazon, what would that look like? is started to piece together what that solution would look like. So this is the same thing, just on an Amazon platform.
And
So-
you're not thinking about Amazon. It's just like you want cloud, like one full cloud solution could be anything, right?
That's right. Azure. I mean, you know, there's a few to choose from. You know, you figure either Google, Azure, or Amazon. And of those, I haven't met many places that didn't use anything for Amazon. Do you know what I mean? Like, because they were the first in the cloud space with the most, that almost everybody has, even if they're like, oh yeah, we're a big Google. I'm like, yeah, well, where's your Salesforce hosted? Oh, okay, it's on AWS. You know,
That's true. That's true.
oh well. So that's why I kind of, and I knew the U.S. government uses Amazon. So
It makes easier.
Azure, I just went that route. And I think, oh, you know, the reason I did it, because Streamlit, they have a thing with, they support Streamlit. So I was like, oh,
Amazing. Of course.
Yeah.
That's big. If they support Streamlit, that's big. I think that's good cover anything. Then do definitely think about Snowflake as a vector. And I'm gonna just send you the repository what we have in Amazon for your solution. If they want to scale it, there should be a solution for scale, and we can provide you that as well.
I would like to look at that too, because, you know, obviously they acquired Streamlit. So it's part of that solution. But to answer to your wider point, I think, you know, as I was doing this, and there's a lot of documents online on how to do retrieval augmented generation in terms of the technical part. And of course, most of them are overly simplistic. They don't deal really with some of the challenges that I had to deal with in putting something to actual practice. Meaning, yes, you can use LangChain, but if you want to start the thing on your laptop and then you want to deploy it on the cloud, the tool set starts to change when you go through that workflow. So when you go and you look at these articles and these YouTube videos where people are like, well, I've got this thing. It's like, it is true, and you could take that code and replicate what they did, but to go through the workflow for a particular use case is a lot more complicated. That being said, I noticed that the best and the brightest of this stuff really had come up with some of these ideas about 6 months ago. And so I think a lot of this stuff is being worked on in various places. And so my mind kind of goes to, all right, imagine you do have a retrieval augmented generation system in place. What other things can you start to do with that? How can you extend its power to do, what other things can you solve other than just question answering for a human? And so I think, you know, you've got use case one, which is help, you know, most companies have, you know, data that are stored in PDFs or other kind of documents they need to work on. But what else can you do if you, assuming you have that stuff already in some sort of form like this? I feel like visualization would be another interesting one. Like we're doing everything through a chat interface just now. But I can tell you, one of the places that's pretty amazing already with ChatGPT is, although it didn't do a good job answering this question, if you asked it to compare or, you know, to build a table of different and compare and contrast different things, it'll build a table. And, you know, that's just starting to step into visualization. I feel like, you know, how can it do that? If, you know, if you've got a document retrieval system, starting to think of those kinds of things you can think of, I think would be interesting.
No, that absolutely makes sense. And I think right now I did not see that, but this is coming up, and there must be some solution out there for that, but have to look into it. But that makes sense. Absolutely. I think that would be the next steps as well. First building block, and top of it, if that could be one of the other ways as well. And Drew, I do have to join another meeting as well, but thank you so much. This was amazing. And this is recording. I would love to have this recording as well. Yep. But let's connect maybe, and we'll have some next step, what we could do with this as well. And I would love to know the feedback from the Coast Guards as well.
Yes, well, you and me both. So yeah. I'll be sharing that with this group. It's great to see you all. Thank you for the forum to share it and for the positive feedback. And I look forward to seeing everyone next week.
Thank you. Bye.
Take care, everyone.
Okay, bye.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye-bye. I'll have to stop recording first. Okay. Stop recording.